All right, we will call this meeting of the Senate Judiciary Committee to order, and we'll start with our secretary calling the roll, please.
Senator Harris. Here. Senator Orenshaw. Here. Senator Dondero Loop. Here. Senator Wynn. Here. Senator Hansen. Here. Senator Krasner. Here. Senator Stone. Here. Chair Scheibel.
Here. All right, we have everybody present, which constitutes more than a quorum, and we have two items on our agenda today. We have a bill here, well, we have three items. A bill hearing, we have a BDR introduction, and we also have public comment as always. We will start with our bill hearing. I don't think we have any preliminary or housekeeping matters before we get started, so I will invite Senator Krasner up to the table along with any other presenters. As all of you know, the presenters will go first. The members of the committee will have a chance to ask questions, and then after the conclusion of questions, we'll move into testimony in support, opposition, and in the neutral position. Neutral testimony would be anybody who has something that they think would add to our decision on whether or not to recommend passing of the bill, but doesn't have a preference on whether or not we do that. And as usual, it looks like we have a number of people here today, so we will take testimony from, we'll plan on taking testimony from everybody in support and everybody in opposition, 2 minutes per person. If it starts to get unwieldy, I may put a limit on that and do 30 minutes in support and 30 minutes opposition or something like that. But we've never had a problem in this committee before doing things fairly. And for the members, I will ask that you, take one bite at the apple first with your questions. If we have time, we'll go back around for a second loop, but you're always welcome to ask follow-ups, and the presenters are welcome to go directly to the senators when they ask questions. I think that covers everything that we need to get started. I will now open up the hearing on SB 129.
Hello. Good afternoon, Chair Scheibel and honorary members of the Senate Judiciary Committee. For the record, I am Senator Lisa Krasner, representing State Senate District 16, and I sincerely appreciate the opportunity to come before all of you today to present Senate Bill 129. I'd also like to introduce the people who are sitting beside me today: Senator Patricia Spearman, who is my co-sponsor, and Dr. Allison Cotton, who is a double board certified child, adolescent, and adult psychiatrist. She holds an appointment as an assistant professor with the University of Nevada, Reno, and previously served the university as the director for clinical education and psychiatry for third and fourth year medical students, and as the associate psychiatry residency program founder of the Physician Support Line, a national crisis hotline for physicians. During her training, Dr. Cotton worked for a year at the University of Arkansas for Medical Sciences Center for Youth and Families, a treatment center where victims and perpetrators of sexual violence receive treatment. She has been an invited speaker on the topic of trauma, suicide, and sexual assault at several conferences and the Ground Rounds event. This bill, Senate Bill 129, makes an important and I would say long overdue changes to the way we handle justice for victims of sexual assault in Nevada, specifically with regard to a civil action brought by a victim of sexual assault against a perpetrator. Please let me provide some brief background on why I chose to sponsor SB 129. I have been working on improving our statutory scheme relating to sexual assault for many years. In 2017, I sponsored Assembly Bill 145, which extended the statute of limitations on civil actions relating to sexual assault of a minor, a child, including for damages arising out of a minor appearing in pornographic material. We took the statute of limitations then and extended it to 20 years from the time they turn 18. In 2019, I sponsored Assembly Bill 142, which abolished the statute of limitations for prosecuting sexual assault if there was DNA evidence. And in 2021, Senator Dondero Loop was a leader and bringing legislation, SB 203, which among other provisions eliminated the statute of limitations for a civil action to recover damages for sexual abuse if the person abused was a child 18 years old or less. As you can see, improving these types of laws and advocating for justice for victims of sexual assault has been a passion of mine for quite some time, but we still have work to do. While the Nevada Legislature has abolished the statute of limitations on civil actions brought for sexual assault if the victim was a child at the time of the offense, as the Bill Digest points out, we have only a 2-year general statute of limitations for civil actions for an adult who has been sexually assaulted, a person 18 years or older. So not only do we provide a very short time period for such a lawsuit to be filed, we also do not currently include the term sexual assault in our civil statutes governing these types of actions. These are the two reasons why I am bringing SB 129 before you today. Psychiatrists, psychologists, and other professionals who work on behalf of sexual assault survivors will tell you that it can take many, many years, if not most of one's life, for a victim to gain the strength and the courage to come forward and report their abuse, if in fact they ever feel safe coming forward at all. I have an expert witness here with me today, Dr. Cotton, who can speak to the trauma involved in sexual assault and sexual abuse, and to the years of work it takes to heal those wounds and start to become whole. Before I invite others to testify, I will quickly go through the provisions of the bill, SB 129, which you have in front of you. Section 1 sets forth the guidelines for a victim of sexual assault who was an adult, 18 years or older at the time of the assault, to bring a civil lawsuit against an alleged perpetrator or person who was convicted of the sexual assault. Such an action can be brought at any time after the assault occurred. In other words, there is no statute of limitation on these types of civil lawsuits. Additionally, if the plaintiff's alleged injury is the result of 2 or more acts that constitute sexual assault, the plaintiff is not required to identify specifically which of those acts caused the alleged injury. Section 1 also imports into Chapter 11 of the Nevada Revised Statute the definition of sexual assault that is found in Chapter 200.366 of the NRS. That chapter defines what sexual assault is for the purposes of establishing criminal guilt. This is necessary because, as I mentioned before, we currently do not have this definition in the relevant civil statutes, which forces a person who wants to file a lawsuit to do so using other terminology that is not specific to sexual assault. And in my view, it is not sufficient to describe the seriousness of the crime. Section 2 of the bill inserts language necessary to make clear that a suit alleging sexual assault is not subject to the statute of limitations that otherwise applies to actions brought under this chapter of NRS. Section 3 sets forth that the provisions of this bill apply retroactively to any act constituting sexual assault, regardless of any statute that was in effect at the time the sexual assault occurred. And finally, Section 4 makes the bill effective upon passage and approval. I have placed Senate Bill 129 in front of each of you, but I would be remiss if I did not thank the other senators that also signed on, and they're not listed on here. Senator Pazina, Senator Dondero Loop, and Senator Lang have all signed on as co-sponsors to SB 129. I'm very grateful to them. I'd now like to introduce my co-presenters. I'll start with Senator Patricia Spearman, please.
Thank you, Senator Krasner. And when I hear Patricia, I always think it's time for a whooping. So, so Pat is pretty good, okay? I am State Senator Pat Spearman. I represent Senate District 1, which is solely located in North Las Vegas. And I'm going to speak to you from a couple of different vantage points. The first one I'd like to talk about is from a pastoral perspective. I have been a pastor for more than 30 years. I currently am not pastoring a church, but I am still an ordained minister, and people still come to me for counseling. And I will tell you that I have counseled many victims who have not been able to get their lives back together. 2 years, 3 years. In my last church, there was someone who was 62 and sexually assaulted at work when she was 20. And she was never able to get her life back together. A couple of things that happen when someone is sexually assaulted, and that is losing not just self-esteem, but even the ability to try to figure out what you're supposed to do next. And so I signed on to the bill because I think that 2 years, it takes you that long to remember how to spell your name. And so when we really want to do justice for victims of sexual assault, I think that we must leave that statute of limitations alone. The next vantage point I want to speak to you from, and I hope that someone will take this and say something to Department of Defense, and that is we have military sexual trauma that has occurred, and it was rampant in the last 2 wars. As a matter of fact, it was rampant even in Vietnam. Some people say, well, women weren't in Vietnam. Yes, they were. And so it was rampant then. And so some of my colleagues in the military, had this happened to them in the civilian world, they would have recourse. In the military, you have to go through the whole military justice system. And so I'm hoping that this is a first step to make that happen. I know one thing, and that is trauma that is not transformed is transferred. Let me say that again. Trauma that is not transformed is transferred. And so victims of sexual assault, any type of trauma, really, victims of sexual assault specifically, act out in ways that people will usually say, well, I don't understand, why she do that? I mean, you would think that, but because of what has happened to them, and they have been so debilitated emotionally and mentally, many times the things that they say and the things that they do are incongruent with either their emotional age or even their developmental age. When that happens and you're still on the ground groveling, trying to find your way, if your perpetrator is successful, I'll just say that, and you have to watch that success over and over and over again, and there's no way for you to make sure that what that person did to you, he or she pays for it. And so I believe that this is a bill that we must pass. Many times the laws that we see on the books today are laws that were written by people who lived perfect lives, shall I say. Many times they were written, especially in the olden days, like in the 60s and the 70s, were written by people who didn't have these kinds of experience and weren't exposed to these types of things. And so today we are still a women majority legislature, and this is one of the things that we do. We fix stuff and we make stuff right. And my colleague from Senate District 11 has it another way on her wall, but I'll just say we get stuff done. So thank you.
And now Dr. Allison Cotton.
Okay. So I just want to emphasize that as part of my training, I worked at the Center for Healthy Children, where we worked with perpetrators and victims of sexual crimes. most of whom were children, but some of the perpetrators were adults. So I carry that experience into these comments that I'm about to make for you today. So rape, sexual assault, these are uniquely intimate crimes. Perpetrators of rape forcefully engage their victims in sex acts to the point that the victims are too terrorized even to resist. More than once, rape and sexual assault victims with whom I have worked have said to me, "I wish he had just killed me." Rape victims uniquely experience shame, guilt, self-hatred, and self-blame. Furthermore, a 2022 study confirmed research showing that up to 75% of rape victims experience stigmatization when they disclose their rape. This includes minimization of the actions of the perpetrator, doubting the veracity of the victim's disclosure, blaming the victim, and even urging the victim to stay quiet so as not to disrupt family or social ties. Often the perpetrator is close to the victim, so he or she lives in constant fear of the rapist after the assault. For these reasons and so many more, disclosing a rape is a terrifying prospect. Rape and sexual assault are among the most demoralizing crimes one person can inflict on another. Victims of intimate interpersonal violence and trauma are more likely to develop post-traumatic stress disorder, depression, anxiety, and substance use disorders than people who experience other types of traumas. Additionally, they are at increased risk for experiencing another sexual trauma in the future. The social, emotional, physical, and psychological effects are devastating, both in the initial aftermath and for the rest of the victim's life. The initial devastation of rape is easy to appreciate because we can see bruises and broken bones. We can test for sexually transmitted infections. We can see the product of a rape pregnancy. The far-reaching consequences can be more difficult to appreciate, for they are insidious and often occur while the victim remains silent. These consequences can include development of a deep mistrust for others, inability to develop self-esteem and confidence, disruption of the victim's education, loss of the ability to form intimate relationships, loss of family relationships, self-medication with drugs and alcohol, development of maladaptive coping strategies which lead the victim to develop chronic diseases, and so much more. Furthermore, the human brain is very, very good at suppressing and repressing traumatic events so that we can survive the day-to-day. A victim may not even consciously remember that a rape occurred for several decades. When a repressed memory emerges, it is as if the victim has just experienced the assault. Whether the victim is a 7-year-old who immediately reports the assault, a 50-year-old whose memories come flooding back after an emotional trigger, or a 70-year-old who is finally able to let him or herself remember that it happened. The good news is that there is hope for healing. Trauma is incredibly treatable if the victim has the resources and the ability to participate in treatment. Part of treatment for sexual assault victims, in particular, is to give them back the power surrounding the assault. Giving a victim the ability to choose whether or not to pursue legal action, even 50 years later, is incredibly important in the healing process. I want to share a few examples with you to illustrate how the psychological effects of rape can impact people. I have changed names and some details to protect patient privacy, but these are real stories. Sarah, first, is a 62-year-old woman who I saw for psychotherapy several years ago. She was raped by a college boyfriend at the age of 21. When she told her roommate what had happened, she was told that she could never tell her parents because of the shame it would bring them. The roommate also responded with questions about whether or not Sarah had teased him sexually. What was she wearing at the time? Had she been drinking? Was she asking for it? These are all questions we now know are completely inappropriate. Sarah kept the rape secret over the next 40 years, and sex became such a painful act for her that she avoided romantic relationships. She had recurring nightmares about the attack and found herself unable to form meaningful relationships at all. She never fully recognized that her ongoing problems were connected with the attack, nor did she realize that she could get treatment. She never married, and our focus in psychotherapy was her deep regret at never having had children. She did eventually seek trauma-focused treatment and was able finally to have a positive sexual relationship with a romantic partner when she was almost 70 years old. I was the second person she told about the rape. Excuse me. Then there's John, a man in his 60s who I met several weeks ago. Thank you. I got it. I'm holding it together. Gosh, this is what we do in my office. Okie dokie. John is a man in his 60s I met several weeks ago. A family member sexually abused him when he was a child and young adult, and he was told not to say anything by his mother when he did disclose the abuse. Decades later, I was called to speak with him about his anxieties surrounding a new diagnosis of congestive heart failure. What I uncovered was a lifetime of maladaptive coping habits driven by self-loathing and anxiety related to the sexual abuse. His mother's response communicated to him that what happened to him was shameful and not worth pursuing. And this internalized shame undoubtedly contributed to obesity, heart disease, diabetes, and other health problems, which will shorten his life. This is a man who asked for help and was denied it by his own mother. I have to ask myself what his life might have looked like if he had not suffered that ultimate invalidation as a child and young adult. These are just two examples of people who have suffered in silence for decades due to fear of coming forward after being sexually assaulted. Last, I want to talk to you about Phoenix, whose name is not changed. He's given me permission to use his real name because he wants people to know that he has indeed risen from the ashes. I first met 9-year-old Phoenix in the emergency room after he had taken half a bottle of Tylenol in a suicide attempt. That night, he disclosed that he had been anally penetrated by a family member, his grandfather. Phoenix did not suffer the same fate as John and Sarah. His mother believed him, and so did I. He was able to get the treatment he so desperately needed, and the treatment itself, even with the support of his family and a team of medical professionals, led to 2 more suicide attempts and severe depression. He struggled with the extremely complex emotional burden of sexual abuse by a family member as his grandfather was convicted and sent to prison. He felt at fault as his family fractured into pieces as aunts and uncles were forced to pick a side. His grades plummeted and he was held back a year. He punched holes in the walls, not knowing what else to do with the anger inside him. Through all of this, Phoenix and his family had a team of doctors and therapists supporting them, and it was still pure hell for this little boy who didn't ask for any of it. Fast forward 6 years, and Phoenix is a straight-A student. He is happy, and he doesn't punch holes in the walls. Instead, he volunteers with kids who are victims of sexual abuse. More than once during the process, he tearfully told me he wished he had never told what happened. As you can see, rape victims must choose between suffering and silence, and potentially suffering even more if they speak out. I am here today to wholeheartedly and passionately urge you to embrace this opportunity to support victims of sexual violence. The far-reaching psychological and emotional effects of rape can be completely debilitating, and each victim's experience is unique. We know that the average time it takes for a person to disclose childhood sexual abuse is 20 to 25 years. Applying a limit to the time a person has to process the immensely complex emotional burden of rape is detrimental to any opportunity that a person may have to heal. A step in the right direction for supporting victims of rape and sexual violence is to remove this statute of limitations so that I and other professionals no longer have to tell our patients it's too late. Thank you.
There are several people who have come from other cities, other states, that would like to testify. Also, would you like me to answer questions now or after they testify? Chair.
Let's go ahead and get through questions first, and then I'll open it up for testimony.
Okay, thank you, Chair.
All right, members of the committee, who has a question? All right, I have a question. I'm wondering if anybody can speak to, in these types of civil suits, what kinds of damages are commonly awarded when a plaintiff is successful?
I could try. So there's two types of law for people who are not lawyers. There's criminal law and civil law. In a criminal lawsuit, someone could receive jail time, but in a civil lawsuit, they sue for money damages. Well, first of all, not every lawyer will accept these cases. It's not a slam dunk. The few lawyers that do, God bless them. And then it's not a slam dunk. Once a lawyer accepts your case, you still have to go in front of a judge and a jury and prove your case. But it's money damages, and that money allows those victims to go see the psychiatrist or psychologist that they need help from and need to talk to. It allows them maybe to go back to school and get their life back together. So those money damages are very important to victims of sexual assault.
Thank you. Senator Dondero Loop.
Thank you very much. And I'll just add something in reference to the chair's question in the testimony from what I said in 21 and in my testimony, and that was, according to the National Center for Victims of Crime, nearly every state has a basic suspension of the statute of limitations for civil actions while a person is a minor. Many states have also adopted additional extensions specifically for cases involving sexual abuse for children. So those extensions for civil actions for children are different than our adults, right? And so that's why this is so important.
Yes.
Because in my mind, because some of us are just graduating high school at 18, right? We're not a 40-year-old adult as well. So there's some areas in there where you go to college, you may get a job, what have you. So thank you very much for bringing this forward.
And Madam Chair, I don't know what the penalties have been or what the damages awarded would have been, but I will tell you everyone that I've ever done pastoral counseling with, for them, there was no amount of money that would help them get their soul back. And the person that I mentioned earlier, 62 years old, said to me, I wish I had a chance to say to that son of a biscuit, how this feels, and wish I could get some of what they have now, because my life is trash. So.
May I say one more thing? I want to emphasize that.
And if you could just repeat your name for the record.
Yes, I'm Dr. Allison Cotton. I'm a child, adolescent, and adult psychiatrist. The importance of this bill, to me, as a psychiatrist, does not necessarily lie with the opportunity to get money. It lies with the opportunity to choose. Many of the people that I have worked with have not even felt able to testify in court or pursue things legally. But giving them the opportunity to say, it is my choice, I am empowered to choose this or not choose this, is absolutely imperative to help them heal and move forward.
Thank you. Other questions? Senator Stone.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I want to applaud the authors for bringing this forward, and Doctor, thank you for your compelling, touching, disturbing stories. And it reminds me, as many of you know, I served in the legislature in California, and a similar bill was brought forward by one of my colleagues in a bipartisan bill to abolish the statute of limitations in California. The instigating factor for that bill was a very famous celebrity that was accused and convicted of sexually assaulting youngsters all the way to adults, and was represented by Gloria Allred. And as you know, witnesses get 5 minutes each to talk, and then we bring up other witnesses that get a minute or two. And there were dozens of women that came forward that for the first time in their lives told these horrific stories of abuse. And we had a limit in the Senate there that everybody was limited to a minute to speak, and the chair was respectfully saying, your time is up, and I had requested of the chair, can we give them more time? This is healing and this is cathartic to let these women speak for the first time in 36 years about a traumatic event that's touched their lives, and I'm grateful that the committee agreed to hear all of this testimony. So I understand that a lot of this is suppressed for many, many years, and a 2-year statute of limitations doesn't suffice. And bringing this forward is going to give them justice and give them the resources they need to get the appropriate health care. And I applaud you all for bringing it forward, and also to my senator and my neighboring community in number 8. I want to thank her for her previous legislation to accomplish the same.
All right. Are there any other questions from members of the committee? All right, not seeing any questions. Thank you all for your presentation. We will now open it up for testimony in support of SB 129. We will start with people in person in Carson City. Anybody who wants to testify, please come on down to the front. When you testify, there is a little button to press to turn on the microphone. Make sure you say and spell your name for the record. That way our fantastic secretaries can get it recorded properly. Each person will have 2 minutes to speak, and after we finish up everybody here in person, we will go to our friends in Las Vegas in person. Whenever you're ready, go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair and members of the committee. My name is Marlene Lockhart, and in this instance, I am representing myself and the Domestic Violence Resource Center, formerly known as CAW, in Reno, Nevada. We are in strong support of this measure for the obvious reasons that have been stated in the presentation. But I would like to point out that in this case of sexual assault, it was the one example that was used with Phoenix. It was also a domestic violence situation on top of the initial crime. And so we strongly feel that this measure should be passed. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Chair and members of the committee. For the record, my name is Tess Opferman. I am here on behalf of the Nevada Women's Lobby. We heard some very compelling testimony. There are many reasons why victim survivors may not come forward, or why they may come forward years after a crime has taken place. So we feel this measure is incredibly important. We're so grateful to Senator Krasner for continuing her work and her support of victim survivors of domestic and sexual violence. And we're thankful for her bringing forward this bill today, and we urge your support. Thank you so much.
Good afternoon, Chair, members of the committee. My name is Serena Evans. I'm the Policy Director for the Nevada Coalition to End Domestic and Sexual Violence. We know that recovering from sexual violence is a lifelong process, and that each victim survivor's response is unique and personal. And that is why we're here today in support of Senate Bill 129. We thank Senator Krasner, Spearman, and Dr. Cotton for their powerful and emotional bill introduction. We echo all of the sentiments that they shared. What justice and healing may look like to one victim survivor may not be the same for another. We know that the criminal justice system often does not always yield the results that victim survivors wish, and that engaging in the criminal justice system can be draining and re-traumatizing. Abolishing the statute of limitations for civil proceedings creates another avenue for victim survivors to pursue justice and accountability against their perpetrator. As it was made clear earlier during the presentation, it is not uncommon for victim survivors to shut down emotionally and not be ready to talk about their experience for years or decades later. This should not mean that they are denied options for justice, and so abolishing the statute of limitations for civil proceedings is a victim-centered approach. NCE DSV firmly believes in creating options for victim survivors and supporting them in their pursuit of justice, whatever that looks like to them, and so we support and urge the passage of this measure. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Janice Baker Kinney, and spell it, you said? Baker-Kinney. And Senator Stone, I wanted to thank you because I was one of the group of women that helped change that law in California, and I was the person that was asked to stop speaking. And I got out of line, and you brought up that, can we continue to speak? And I came back and was able to speak my truth to everyone. So you've been my hero since then for allowing me to speak, so thank you. So I was raped when I lived in Reno. And the three most difficult words I had to ever say was, I was raped. It was in the early 80s. And I didn't say those three words until about 2015, when I first came forward. And I never admitted to being raped all those years because I blamed myself. And the person that raped me was someone I knew, someone admired, someone well trusted. And the term acquaintance rape wasn't in the common vernacular then. One of the reasons why I blamed myself at the time was because I accepted pills from this person, and the pills were much stronger than I had been led to believe and caused me to pass out, which in turn allowed him to rape me while I was in and out of consciousness. So why did I wait 30 years to come forward? And you heard most of that today, especially from our psychiatrist. But I was humiliated, I was embarrassed, and I thought I slept with him. I justified what he did to me by placing the blame on myself, and I was humiliated and said, I passed out in front of this man and I slept with him. So that was blaming me, not, I re-victimized myself like so many survivors have done to them, people do to them. The what were you wearing stuff, the did you drink too much, why were you there? So by re-victimizing myself, I never had to come to terms with what happened to me that night. Coming forward was difficult because of the 30-plus years that I kept silent about it. I kept second-guessing myself and playing the blame game for decades. And so many survivors do that after they've been sexually assaulted. But through the encouragement of my close friends and family, I felt the strength to make a public statement about what happened to me. And it wasn't easy, that first step. It's never easy. But the gate had opened and a toxic chain of silence was broken. And there was no turning back. Excuse me. Admitting that one has been a victim of rape is scary and difficult enough to begin with. But then comes the public shame, the associated stigmas, and the fear that comes with speaking one's truth becomes overwhelming. I was fortunate enough to have a great support system. And especially from a lot of my fellow survivors, I formed a sisterhood with them. And I found that some of the pain loses its power when you do speak out and when you do share it. I had an immediate connection to these women, and I stopped feeling so alone in my guilt. But this need to share has consequences also, and I shut down from my husband and sharing with him. I wanted to share my pain with people that had the same story as I did. So I had no idea at the time that burying that so deep for so long would affect me once I finally came forward the way it did. And it was new territory. It felt like once I said that out loud, that it happened 3 weeks ago, not 30 plus years ago. And so there were so many raw emotions to deal with, and the underlying guilt and shame, no matter what I was told that it wasn't my fault. I found a great therapist, and luckily I have great insurance that would pay for a therapist. And through many years of therapy and marriage counseling, I was able to reconnect with my husband, who was a strong support system, but I shut him out of my life because he didn't know what I was going through. There are thousands and thousands of survivors out there who aren't as lucky and as fortunate as I was to have a support system, to have people to lean on, to be able to go to therapy. I can't say this has still been easy, but it's been empowering and it's liberating to be able to say it. I'm surprised that it's making me so emotional because I feel so much stronger now that I've come forward, and I can say screw you to this person and shout it from the rooftops, and I'm not ashamed of myself. But there's still those days that I have troubles sometimes forgiving myself, and I second guess myself, like what could I have done differently? I buried it for so long that it's still hiding in that depths of my soul. So speaking my truth has brought some strength and peace, but it has not brought consequences for my rapist. The one thing that hasn't been served is justice, because my time has passed. By now, most everyone on this planet has enough information on why it takes years for us to come forward, and you heard a lot of that today. It's well documented, it's reported on by experts in mental health and by victim advocate organizations such as RAIN and PAVE. The Me Too movement opened up new avenues of awareness and resources for information as to why we wait so long. So I commend the leaders in this state of Nevada for extending the statute of limitations and for reporting sexual assault. But for far too many of us, that time has long, long passed. The only way for justice to be served is for this committee to allow this bill to move forward to be voted on. So many states are listening to the same things that you guys are listening to and have some completely abolished the statute of limitations. Thank you, California. Because everyone has become aware of the difficulty and trauma that survivors experience by trying to report this crime. But these laws aren't retroactive. Passing a look-back law and abolishing statute of limitations gives us a chance at seeking the justice we all deserve, everyone deserves. It's another step in our healing process. And I'm here today to encourage you to vote yes on SB 129 and allow it to move forward. I so appreciate your time, I really do. I know I went longer than 2 minutes, but thank you very much.
Good afternoon. I am Sabrina Lublin. I'm 15 years old, and I am here in support of SB 129. 8 years ago, in November, my mother had gone to the Las Vegas police station and filed a report for sexual assault. Her case was dismissed because of the statute of limitations. She had her 4-year window to report it criminally back in 1989, only finding out in 2014 that she was sexually assaulted. 4 years for an individual to come and report their sexual assault, to face the truth, the pain, and the memories that happened, they must come and dump it into a case file within 4 years. What happens if someone comes forward within 5 years after being sexually assaulted? 10 years, 20 years. How can we ignore a plea for help? This person has come forward asking for justice after knowing or learning that their body has been violated. No one wants to be violated, but because of the law, they cannot find the justice they ask for. 10 minutes with a predator can impact 10 years of someone's life or even more. It can change and mold that person into something completely new, creating a shell of themselves, a hollow, empty shell of a person. Give the opportunity for girls like me and women like my mother to always have a chance. All they need is a chance that they can get the justice that they fight for. And today I am sitting here fighting for the chance that they need. Thank you.
Hello, my name's Amanda Voskov, Vaskov for the record. I serve as the Director of Government Affairs for the Associate Students at the University of Nevada, and that's our undergraduate student population. Across the multi-year survey at UNR, 58% of our students reporting experiencing sexual coercion in their first year. 1/3 of these students chose to go forward, and amongst the reasons for not going forward were sentiments along the lines of, no one would believe me, or I was in a relationship and didn't realize that assault could be with a partner. And these reasons can persist for a long time, but more profoundly, the pain can last a lifetime. The Associate Students of the University of Nevada support this bill, and its efforts to allow victims, our peers, to come forward and seek damages should they choose to on their own time. Thank you so much.
Good afternoon. I'm Simon Lublin, and I'm here to read a statement in support of SB 129. I want to thank you guys for the opportunity to speak here now. My statement may not be long, but I hope it will be memorable. When my parents had first found out about the sexual assault my mother had faced, it was a hard time. What had made it the hardest, though, was that finding that the statute of limitations would bar my mother from seeking any form of justice. I've always looked up to my parents, and when faced with this obstacle, they overcame. They've changed laws for the better for both adults and children. Rather than giving up, they decide to help others. It is easy to say that sexual assault is bad and to know that it is not a good thing, but it is much more difficult to understand what it actually does to a person. The emotional impact from it is something that requires someone strong enough to persevere. The few that do are rewarded with the ability to take their abusers to court. However, there are some who find it hard to revisit this terrible moment in their life. They wait, and in doing so, make justice harder to find. They torment themselves with what has happened to them, and when they are finally ready to speak, they are told there is nothing that can be done because of the statute of limitations. Their one hope of repercussions is ripped from them, and this has happened to my mother, and no doubt has happened to other men and women. Everyone talks about their sympathies and wishes something could be done. Now is the time that something can be done. The chance can be given back to victims, and victims can have hope again. Thank you for your time.
My name is Susan Reed. Turn on your phone. My name is Susan Reed. I am a lifetime resident of Reno, and I have known Janice for over 30 years, who just spoke in front of you. So I stand by her, and I just urge you to pass this bill. Thank you. And stop.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair and members of the committee. My name is Janine Hansen. I'm the state president of Nevada Families for Freedom. I'm here today to support this bill and thank Senator Krasner and others who have been along the way promoting this. Of course, this is a very emotional issue. My dear friend's husband was repeatedly raped when he was a little boy, and when he confronted his mother about it, she denied it and refused to accept what he was saying. Since that time, he's a grown man. He's over 40 now, but he doesn't have any relationship with his mother, and he's still dealing with the trauma of this particular issue. It's been a blessing in my life that he calls me Mom, and I have been able to be part of the healing of this tragedy in his life. And so we appreciate the thoughtfulness of bringing this bill and for those that it will help, and we support it. And thank you for your hearing today.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair and members of the Judiciary Committee. My name is Heidi Thomas. I'm actually from Castle Rock, Colorado. I'll explain to you why I am here in a little bit. I thank you for your time, and I thank you for listening. I am here to ask that you allow this same privilege to others, of being allowed to speak and be heard by supporting this bill. 129. I'm one of millions of people who has endured sexual assault and rape. I now know that I suffered from the classic symptoms of victims of sexual assault. I told no one because I couldn't even process it myself. I truly didn't want to believe it. I dealt with years of panic attacks and a variety of counselors and therapies, and I have no idea how much money I spent trying to get myself together. Thanks to the internet, when I came forward, and it was a very public story, people were able to find me. These people just needed to tell their stories. And they would contact me through the internet, a complete stranger. And it was because they knew I would understand it. These were women and men from every conceivable demographic. Most of these people sobbed on the phone as they struggled to tell me their stories, and most were telling it for the very first time. The vast majority of the people who contacted me were between the ages of 60 and 80 years old. They were broken human beings. Many of their lives had been destroyed. They had turned to drugs or alcohol to ease the pain. Many had served prison time due to activities that were spurred on by their addictions. Some of both genders had gone into prostitution, feeling like that was all they were good for. Many couldn't maintain any relationships with their families or a partner or even with their friends. They were isolated and they were re-victimized by that isolation. So the process for recovery is often as emotionally traumatic as the crime, telling a victim that they need to be able to report horrific details, relive the assault, speak in front of strangers about the intensity of this violation within some arbitrary time frame is yet another assault. If they aren't emotionally capable of the necessary steps in the process, they forfeit their right to justice. In addition, we're now becoming more and more aware of DFSA, drug-facilitated sexual assault. My assault and rape occurred a few miles from where we are sitting right now. I can't tell you where it was because I was kidnapped and drugged. Victims of this crime, like myself, have a doubly difficult time reporting because we cannot remember the details. We only know we've been assaulted. Perpetrators of this crime count on this. It is known as the perfect crime. I truly believe, having now looked into this crime for decades, these perpetrators honestly don't think that what they are doing is all that bad. They don't realize it will scar for life. You may hear others assert that this bill violates somebody's liberties or someone's right to a swift trial. Having any kind of limits placed on a crime that will affect the victim for the rest of their life does not honor the liberties and the rights of those who have already endured a crime. You may also hear that this will flood the courts with a deluge of long overdue cases. Keep in mind, every case will still need to have evidence to proceed to trial. And we all know many of these crimes will not be able to produce evidence. But at least, as Dr. Cotton pointed out, the choice is theirs. Should a witness come forward who can testify, they have the opportunity for justice. I tell you from personal experience that victims of sexual assault spend every day for the rest of our lives putting themselves back together. Every morning, every day. They deserve the right to justice when they are emotionally strong enough for the fight. Please give them that opportunity. I ask you to support passing SB 129. Thank you very much for your time.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair and Judiciary Committee. I am Lisa Lott Lublin, and I am in support of SB 129. My children just came up and shared their support for the bill as well, made their mama very proud. Very proud. Thank you for the opportunity to express my deepest concerns for the adults of our community. My struggle began in November of 2014 when I discovered I had been a victim of a sexual assault. I was unaware of my assault for 24 years. My assailant used drugs to incapacitate me, and that strategy restricted my ability to fight for my right to say no. One of the side effects of being drugged is the inability to recall all the events of the assault. But through this journey, I have suffered a slow recall of those events, and my only recourse today is to fight the laws that delay my healing process. My brother was also assaulted when he was young in middle school by his teacher. He and several other students were verbally, mentally, physically, and sexually abused. He could not recover from the damage that was done to him. I watched my brother struggle in school. He failed everyday issues. He attempted relationships that he couldn't hold on to, and ultimately he self-destructed. No one deserves that kind of life. As a survivor of sexual assault, I've experienced a loss of control over the events in my life, and I have random remembrances that haunt me and continue to derail my life. With my commitment to advocate for change, I continue to nourish the healing of many survivors and to preserve the spirit for our lives and our self-worth. And this is one of the only places I can do that. Today I bring my family and my survivor sisters who spoke earlier to plead our case for an equal, fair, and equitable opportunity with the justice system. I'm asking you to equalize the law to include the opportunity to protect our human rights as adults by eliminating the statute of limitations. Please consider the great service you would afford survivors by giving the power to the justice system through supporting this bill. Thank you.
All right, good afternoon, Chairman and Judiciary Committee. My name is Benjamin Lublin. I'm born and raised in Las Vegas, Nevada, and I will be reading my statement in support of SB 129. My wife, Lisa Lott Lublin, and I fought for victims' rights since 2015 with our first bill, AB 212, that extended the statute of limitations for sexual assault from 4 to 20 years. Mr. Ira Hansen, who's not here because I wanted to say hi, at the time was the Assembly Judiciary Committee Chairman. Recently, the statute of limitations for children of sexual assault in Nevada has been abolished in civil court. As survivors of sexual assault, we ask for equity within the law. But the statute of limitations ensures that the law is not equitable and works in favor for the perpetrator. After 2 years, the perpetrator gets away with their rape or sexual assault with no repercussions. But the victim is left distraught, their life in disarray, and their mental and physical health devastated. It could take years, if not decades, of therapy just to put the pieces back together. Sexual assault and rape is considered one of the most heinous criminal and civil offenses, with only murder trumping it. But in civil court, the damage to personal property has a longer statute of limitations at 3 years than sexual assault and rape. Is that equity? I keep on thinking equity. Is that equity? My wife was very pointful when it came to equity. I get asked this question all the time. Why doesn't a victim of sexual assault come forward when it has happened? Why does it take so much time for one person to let the authorities know why they have been assaulted or raped? I can tell you firsthand because I am a survivor of sexual assault. It took me 25 years to feel brave enough to tell one person in my life, and that was my wife, Lisa. I have lived with this guilt and shame of being a victim the entirety of my adult life. Even now, as a 46-year-old man, sitting in front of all of you, I feel embarrassed, ashamed, and the need to hide has happened to me. The need to hide has been ingrained in every fiber of my being. I am living proof not only does the psychological damage follow you through life, but the need for self-preservation is real. This is not about money. It's not about money. This is about justice. If I had the ability to go ahead and take my perpetrator to court, whether it was criminal or civil, I would want justice. And I ask each and every one of you to give me that chance. I don't have it. The statute of limitations has robbed me of this. I'm urging each and every one of you to pass SB 129 and allow survivors the ability to find justice. How you doing, Ira? Yes. AB 212, you were Judiciary Chairman for the Assembly, and AB 145, I think it was. And it's good seeing you again. It's been a couple years. I appreciate each and every one of your guys' time. Thank you so much.
Chairman Scheibel, my name is Scott Johnston, Johnston. I'm in support of SB 129, and I'll submit my written testimony to the Secretary to save some time. Thank you.
Is it going to hum because both of them are on? Okay, my name is Sherry Powell. I am not a stranger to most. Some of you are new. I've been following these bills for decades, literally, going from the no statute of limitations for children, adults. I am the founder of the Ladies of Liberty, which is a victims' rights group, and I would like to thank any senator or assemblyman, because some have changed positions on their support of Marcy's law. That was the best legislation that passed. I can stand up here now, sit here, and give you some numbers. I always swear I'm not going to do numbers because everybody comes up and tells stories, but let's get a rude awakening for Nevada. Basically, this doesn't cost the taxpayers a dime. Second of all, I have been the victim while in my minority and my majority. Statute of limitations definitely protects the perpetrator. I was not drugged. I didn't wear fancy clothes. In fact, the last assault on me was in 2016, and at that time, I was a fat old lady like I am right now. So it had nothing to do with how I was dressed, where I was at, or what I was doing. Perpetrators know what they're doing. And as some know, my daughter was a victim. It's really easy, you can look it up, because I was not quiet. I spoke out. I have discussed with many district attorneys. Our prosecution rate is less than 1% for violent crime in the state of Nevada. I could bring back the black eye of Nevada, the 2011 release of, Philip Garrido, who walked right up to his victim the minute he got out of prison, announced to her that, he was out, and proceeded to kidnap J.C. Lee Dugard. Thank goodness for kidnapping statute of limitations. There's none. But if she wanted to be heard as a child or as an adult, her statute of limitations would have been up before she was ever found. I believe that anybody who has a sister a brother, a mother, a child would not ever conceive of the fact that these victims don't deserve a trial. They don't deserve civil restitution. And not only that, I can revamp one wonderful thing. My sexual assault at 7, I thought I would never see that man again. I was supported by a wonderful grandma and mother. I saw him only 2 years ago at the funeral of my brother. He was allowed to proceed with his life and became very prosperous. And so what if I would have took money from him? Unfortunately, at that time, the statute of limitations in Nevada is 2 years. It occurred in California, so thank you for letting me know that that has been extended because I am 61. This is what a 61-year-old looks like with a fabulous support system, which is rare. I can assure you my assault in Washoe County at, 2 years ago? I did not tell anybody. Why? Because I did not want anybody to know, period. When I finally told somebody, they showed me their backpack and let me know that there was a firearm in there. Had I known that at the time, the individual would not be here. That's how I feel about that. I didn't tell the organizer or the head of that particular organization that I was elected to, and they chose to call the police. When the police called and came in, the first question that I was asked was, why didn't you report this? How come you waited so long? How come you didn't call us? I'm sorry, what? The reason that I didn't call you is because I did not feel like being interrogated, period. Something very horrible happened to me. And anybody who knows me knows that I am not a weak person at all. There is not a, shh, be quiet, Bixby. Sorry, my phone, I will shut it off. I'm sorry, I am so sorry for that. Bottom line is, I believe anybody, no matter.
Bixby voice privacy
Shh, be quiet,
contents
be
have
quiet,
been
be quiet, be quiet. Oh my God.
Bixby voice privacy.
Privacy, don't talk, Sherry. I have not been in the legislature for 3 years, just so you guys know, so there you go. Anyways, I don't get embarrassed. Maybe that's part of it. My mother, my grandmother, always let me know that it was not my fault. I never believed that it was my fault. I never believed that those people had power over me. And you know what? I would hope that you allow the individuals, because I have spoke out mostly for others, who somewhere lose that self-assuredness. They lose that hope. They lose that spark and that spirit. So I would hope that all of you would give them at least a little bit of a spark and pass SB 129. Thank you for your time.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, members of the committee and staff. My name is Rick McCann, Nevada Association of Public Safety Officers, and a member of the Nevada Law Enforcement Coalition. My words are not as important as what you've heard. Let me make that clear. But I'll make them anyway for the record. I want to point out that existing law does outline statutes of limitations. You may have seen it in NRS Chapter 11. One such wrong that can be aggrieved civilly is a motor vehicle accident. 2-year statute of limitations. Libel or slander, 2 years. Simple assault, 2 years. Trespass of real property, 3 years. Damage to personal property, 3 years. Fraud, 3 years. Breach of an unwritten contract is 4 years. Deceptive trade practices, 4 years. And breach of a written contract, 6 years. Rape, 2 years. Right now, the statute of limitations in Nevada, within which a civil action must be filed by a victim of rape, of sexual assault, is similar to that of a car accident or trespassing on your property. That's just bullshit. Pardon my language. We ask that you demonstrate through your actions in this committee and the future committees who will hear this bill that allow perpetrators of sexual assault to remain civilly liable until justice can be served, whenever that is. I ask for your support of SB 129. Thank you.
Chair Scheibel and the committee, my name is Beth Schmidt, SCHMIDT. I'm the Director of Intergovernmental Services for the Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department. I'm here to testify in support of SB 129. I want to recognize and commend the strength of the men and women who have testified today. The LVMPD believes the extension of the civil action timeframe is an important resource for victims of sexual assault.
Thank you, Chair Scheibel, members of the Senate Judiciary Committee. My name is John Jones. I'm here on behalf of the Nevada District Attorneys Association. I want to thank Senator Krasner, Senator Spearman for bringing in this bill, and for all of the reasons that you have heard today, we are in support.
Good afternoon, Chair. Good afternoon, members of the committee. I'm Jason Walker, Jasonwalker, on behalf of the Washington County Sheriff's Office and the Nevada Sheriffs and Chiefs Association, testifying in support for SB 129. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Chair Scheibel and members of the Judiciary Committee. My name is Leonardo Benavides, Leonardobenavides, here representing the City of North Las Vegas. I just want to state our support for SB 129 and thank Senators Krasner and Spearman for bringing this bill forward. Thank you.
Ellie, I'm in support, it says it's on, of 129. And I'd like to say, as a psychiatrist, I now have been trained and ask every one of my patients, have you ever been touched in a way or a place that now, looking back, seems inappropriate? I expect a positive answer, always. My colleague Judy Turner up at the University of Washington, who's a pain specialist, says 1 in every 3 women with chronic pain has been sexually assaulted. My experience confirms that as well. This is an important bill because it's going to allow resources. And one of the limitations we see in psychiatry is, despite the alleged parity in insurance, there's just something about psychiatry, substance use disorders, that always comes with caps and limitations. We need to get rid of this. This might allow people to have those resources. I want to leave you with an interesting idea. Californians, some of us are recovered Californians. My mother was an actress in the 1950s. I don't think many of us remember the 1950s, but you probably saw my mother if you watched TV in the 1950s. To be able to transition from television to film, she had to sleep her way into that work. This is before Weinstein. This is before the famous situations we're hearing about, but that was the norm in the 1950s. My mother left her favored profession to become a school teacher. She didn't know what else to do. So this is a real bill. It's got real teeth to it. SB 129 needs to pass.
Good afternoon, members of the committee. My name is Amber Martin. I am here to support Bill SB 129.
All right. Thank you, everybody, so much who has testified here today in person in Carson City. I don't see anybody else coming to the table. As one of our previous testifiers did, you're welcome to submit comments via email or printed form to our secretary here in the room. And I personally read all of them. I encourage all the members of my committee also to read every comment that is submitted to us. And we will now move to testimony in support in Las Vegas. So those of you who are, I do see some people in Las Vegas. If you want to make your way down to the table at the front, the microphones should also have buttons down there. Turn on the button to turn on the microphone, give us your name, and you'll have approximately 2 minutes to speak.
Thank you, Madam Chair and members of the committee. My name is Kim Small, Kimsmall. I am the CEO of Signs of Hope, formerly known as the Rape Crisis Center, a 49-year Clark County nonprofit that serves survivors in the immediate aftermath and long-term recovery following sexual abuse and assault for as long as it takes at no cost. Signs of Hope supports SB 129 as an avenue for victim survivors to hold their perpetrators accountable in instances when the criminal justice system was not an option or failed them in connection to their criminal case. We also support this bill for abolishing the statute of limitations for when a victim survivor of sexual violence may pursue civil action against their perpetrator, as we often serve clients who come to us for the first time years and sometimes decades after the abuse has occurred.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair and members of the committee. My name is Betsy Aguilar, Aguilar, and I'm a member of Nevada Justice Association. I'm here today in support of SB 129, and I'd also like to extend my thanks to Senator Krasner for sponsoring this bill. As you've already heard today, rape and sexual assault is a serious and ongoing issue that can affect anyone, any gender, any age, any religion, and any socioeconomic background. Currently, as you've also heard today, should a victim come forward later in life, they are silenced due to this current statute of limitations. These victims should not be silenced because of the amount of serious, life-changing trauma they've experienced, including but not limited to memory suppression or repression. We need to help survivors of abuse have an expanded access to justice. Due to the seriousness of these acts and the horrible effects on the victims, the statute of limitations should be removed for civil proceedings. As you can see, these types of cases are very different than your typical run-of-the-mill motor vehicle accident, slip and fall, or breach of contract case. This bill encourages victims to come forward who have experienced past harm and obtain various remedies, which include the ability to hold their assailants accountable and the consequences to these assailants for the same, as well as give the victims the opportunity to finally tell their story. This bill is crucial for victims of sexual violence as it provides them a way to seek redress for their harm suffered, hold their assailants accountable, and promote the public policy goal of expanding justice to Nevadans, to these Nevadans. Please unlock the courthouse doors for them. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. I don't see anybody else in person in Las Vegas, so we will move to the phone lines. BPS, do we have anybody on the phone wishing to give testimony in support of SB 129?
Thank you, Chair. If you would like to offer testimony in support of SB 129, please press *9 now to take your place in the queue. Once more, that is *9 to offer testimony in support of SB 129. Caller, you are unmuted and may proceed.
Hello, my name is Linda Kirkpatrick, and I like sports. I'm part of a team of millions of sexual assault victims. I'm 1 in a million. Actually, I'm 1 in a 12 to 14 million team of victims. That's the number of how many Americans, both male and female, are victims of sexual violence and rape every year. I was 6 years old when I was forced onto this heinous team. My 18-year-old perpetrator faced no jail time. I dubbed it Team Shame. At 10, the age my sister was when she was forced onto the same team, her perpetrator, same 18-year-old perpetrator, faced no jail time. Again, we're on Team Shame. 13, it happened again. I was 60-year-old neighbor. He threatened no one would believe me and violence on my family, so I kept silent, maintaining my position on Team Shame. By the age of 24, I thought the years of Team Shame were behind me. I excelled, and still do, in sports. In my 20s, I became a high-level tennis player, competing in a tournament at a local club in Las Vegas, Nevada. During that tournament, I unfortunately beat a famous comedian who was staying at the Las Vegas Hilton, who now is an infamous convicted sex offender in the state of Pennsylvania, although he is now out of jail. I woke up the following morning in my own bed, completely soaked with urine. This particular comedian's follow-up comment was that he thought that's what I wanted. Back to team shame I went. I like sports, but not when they end in rape. 25 of 1,000 is how many rapists go to jail. Only 25 out of 1,000. 68, the number of seconds American is forced into team shame. Every 68 seconds in this country, an American, male and female, are victims of sexual assault or rape. So much of my life has been successful. I have beautiful children, amazing grandchildren. I've owned several businesses in Nevada, as well as other states. I'm currently a national champion and a certified instructor for pickleball. All that sounds great. But team shame keeps me from having a loving, successful marriage. I have failed 5 times at the altar. Intimacy escapes me. PTSD, failure to trust when it comes to male-female relationships, that puts me the captain of team shame. Well, I'm tired of being on the underdog team. 12 million victims in this country versus 25 rapists in jail. In Nevada, where sports betting is legal, no sports book would take those odds. Team shame, up until this time, has been bound to lose. You, Nevada, have the power to give us a chance at bat. You, Nevada, have the power to give us a chance to sink that basket. You, Nevada, have the power to give us a chance in court, a level playing field against our perpetrators. Give us a chance at success and pass SB 129. Let's work together at becoming part of a no-limit generation. We are 100% putting our faith in you, Nevada. Let's get justice for victims. Pass SB 129. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair Scheibel. There are no other callers on the line wishing to offer testimony at this time.
All right, thank you so much. In that case, we will move to testimony in opposition. I don't see anybody coming to the table to give opposition testimony in Carson City or in Las Vegas. So we'll go briefly to the phones. Is there anybody on the phone to give opposition testimony?
Thank you, Chair Scheibel. There are no other callers on the line to offer testimony in opposition at this time.
All right, then we will move to neutral testimony. I don't see anybody coming to the table in Carson City or Las Vegas to give neutral testimony. So once again, we'll go to the phones and see if there's anybody on the line to give neutral testimony.
Scheibel, there are no other callers on the line to offer neutral testimony at this time.
All right, thank you so much. That concludes the testimony on the bill hearing for SB 129. Would the sponsors like to come up and make any closing remarks? You're not obligated to. Go ahead.
I just want to say thank you, Chair Scheibel and members of the Judiciary Committee, for hearing this bill today. Please keep the courtroom doors open. Please allow for justice for victims of sexual assault. I would appreciate your support of SB 129. Thank you.
I just want to thank the committee for hearing my comments and the comments of everybody else as well. I challenge each and every one of you in this room to find a person in your life who has not been touched by sexual violence. You can't do it. So thank you for hearing these comments.
Thank you very much. That concludes the bill hearing on SB 129. And that brings us to the next item on our agenda for today. We have a BDR introduction. You're all welcome to stay for the rest of the meeting. You're also welcome to go. You look a little bit anxious. And BDR number, we're going to go to a 1-minute recess. All right, we are back. And sorry about that delay, but we did get a BDR back for one of our committee BDRs. This is BDR 15-802. I do have some copies available for the members if you would like to read it, but I'll remind you that today all we are voting on, or moving on if someone so moves, is to introduce the BDR. It doesn't indicate that you support or oppose the BDR, simply that you agree to introduce the bill to the legislature. Briefly, what this bill does is it provides exemptions from civil and criminal liability for people who rescue animals or children from hot cars. All right, we have a motion from Senator Orenshaw with a second from Senator Stone. I think we can just do a voice vote on this one. So all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? I don't hear any opposed. So with a unanimous vote, BDR 15-802 will be introduced on the floor in short order. And that brings us to the last item on our agenda, public comment. Is there anybody still in the room wishing to make public comment? I don't see anybody here in Carson City or down in Las Vegas, so we will go to the phones. BPS, do we have anybody on the phone for public comment?
Thank you, Chair Scheibel. There are no callers on the line wishing to offer public comment at this time.
All right, in that case, that brings us to the conclusion of our meeting. We will be here again tomorrow at 1 p.m. I look forward to seeing you all then. We are adjourned.